It's no longer about the technology. So at LifeBridge, we're really leaning hard into not doing digital, but being digital.
From healthcare IT leaders, you're listening to Leader with Ben Hilmes. Our guest today is Tressa Springmann, Senior Vice President and Chief Information and Digital Officer for LifeBridge Health. In our conversation, Tressa discusses LifeBridge Health's commitment to being digital, which she identifies as managing through careful measurement and focusing on providing better tools for both care providers and their patients.
Tressa, it's so great to see you. Thank you for joining me this afternoon. I've been looking forward to this one for some time. We go way back, and I'm really excited about what you're doing, what LifeBridge is doing, and I think this will be just a fun little discussion. So for our listeners, let's talk LifeBridge. You've been there for some time in leadership for more than a decade. Tell my listeners a little bit about LifeBridge. Where are you, your size, what populations you serve? Because I know that's a pretty unique space for you guys, but would just love to know a little bit more about that.
Thanks, Ben. And great to see you again in this different role than what I'm used to. So look, the long and the short of it is I used to be able to have those fresh eyes and see the problem. And now apparently I've been here long enough that I am officially part of the problem. I have this really terrible habit of being an owner. I've got an owner's mentality. I can't just go and observe what I think needs to fix. I want to see it through. And so I've been a bit of a serial CIO a bit. And here at LifeBridge, what's kept me fresh is the innovative reinvention that this organization has done. They don't fit in the box of any stereotypical IDN or healthcare system that you would think about. And when I thought about this question, because a lot of the times I get encouraged to consider other opportunities because there's so many neat things going on in the industry. I think what I've really observed is, well, let me stop by saying I'm an Army kid. So every 3 to 4 years, we pulled up roots. We went to a different duty station. I had to make new friends. I had to surmise what was going on. And just about the time I got comfortable, a new change would come along. But that's what drives me. That's what energizes me. And what this organization has done is really both professionally and personally for me, but also organizationally, as our market and as our industry has changed, LifeBridge has been an organization that's raised their hand and said, we're not going to wait for someone to push us along this change curve. We're jumping in. And so that's provided a lot of exciting opportunities for me, Ben.
That's great. That is great. Well, I was very intrigued by this theme you guys have with your culture. You guys call it Care Bravely. And so I love that. I mean, we used to have typical themes at Adventist, certainly at Shire, like healthcare is too important to stay the same, or it's personal. And so when you can characterize a culture in just a couple of words, it grabs you. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about Care Bravely from your words and how your org leans into that.
Well, thanks. At the end of the day, a lot of the work that we're really here to do has everything to do with keeping people well and getting them better. And that's not easy. There are so many impediments to that. Some people, it's just their mere genetics. Others, it's their environment. It's hard work, and it's hard work where people have to make tough choices. For us, it's e-signing on an informed consent document. But for that patient, it could be a surgery alternative where the life and death options are maybe not even favorable to them. And we can't forget about that. So anyway, Brian and his own visioning and leadership has brought us along this branding experience. In fact, today, the whole digital experience at LifeBridge has its own brand as well. And it's called Hello Brave. And I know that sounds a little odd, but as we were talking about self-serving in a digital world for online appointment scheduling and virtual visits and post-discharge digital follow-up, it allowed us to also brand what we were doing digitally. Like you would see, you go grocery shopping, but you think of Instacart when you think of a digital journey. So we've been having a lot of fun with that, but we believe it differentiates us in the market because it really grounds the human connection that healthcare is all about.
Yeah, I love it. And we're going to get to Hello Brave next because I love how that starts to characterize this big journey you're on. But I think I want to read some of the taglines from Care Bravely because I think they're really neat. It says, seeing patients as people and putting people before profits, using science to make life better for families and communities. And then I love this last one, doing the right thing, even when it's the hard thing. You kind of led with that. I just think that speaks volumes about your organization, the leadership. I know you and Neil have been really passionate about LifeBridge and its position in the market, and the way that people portray you is really important. And I love that you're leaning into that in a pretty material way. So really, really neat to see. So you mentioned Hello Brave, which describes a journey you're on. You're making a huge investment in digital care delivery. It's been described by you as a big pivot for your system. I'd love to know more about this. Share kind of what is it? What outcomes are you expecting to see? Where are you in the journey? Just tell us all about it.
Yeah. Well, so you mentioned Neil, and it was really his inspirational leadership that challenged. And look, we know this. We know that you want to get that for-profit organizations, by and large, are really wanting to maximize how to get that every dollar out of the current state, but not lose sight of where the ball's going. In nonprofit healthcare, here at LifeBridge, we have a for-profit arm, but our nonprofit arm, and as a gentleman who spent his whole life in public health, Neil leads by reminding us that it's all about the community we serve. And we're pretty much putting our head under a basket if we're not recognizing what technology is enabling for people. We say that people don't want to deal with technology with their healthcare, and yet you look at the numbers of what people are choosing to do digitally because it's working and it's bringing them access and convenience, and it's helping them be proactive and feel more in control of their life. And we can choose to stay stuck there, and I guarantee you we'll all be displaced. It's happening with all the disruptors around us. So listen, there's one thing that we in local healthcare have, and that's the trust of our communities. So why don't we take something that we know is really, really hard to build, i.e. trust, and capitalize on that by trying to offer digital alternatives that have parity, that people who maybe have a bigger bank account for those digital investments, but really aren't there just to serve the needs of the community, and certainly haven't built the trust. They've built transactional credibility, but that's about it. And that's okay, depending on where you are with your own health and wellness status. But you and I both know the second it gets scary, you don't want to be dealing with something where you don't have a deep connection and a real abiding trust.
No, I think that's right. And I know from my days at Cerner, now Oracle Health, that every time we were in front of you would always challenge us to think about not just the technical side of things or the selling motion we were in, but help us really kind of think through how does this impact the clinician as well. So as part of Hello Brave, I have to believe a big part of this is not just about your patients and consumers, but also about your providers. So talk to me about how you guys are layering that piece in to help drive their experience, less burnout, et cetera, because I know it's a passion of yours.
Yeah. So look, you're an IT professional in your own right, Ben. So when someone says digital, we kind of get our hackles up because it's like, well, what have we been doing forever? We'll call it what you want. But the new element to this is for years and years and years, we've served the people in our organization. But it's only been the last 5 or so years we've actually put technology in the hands of our end users, our customers. And that's a whole different dynamic. What I think was deemed a very physician or provider centric is being pushed off that balance by consumerism. But these are going to sound like a bunch of sound bites, and it's only because we've been really active on this strategic journey. But listen, between you and me, I can envision a time for myself where I wouldn't have to spend every acute episode in a hospital, right? You and I know the technology and the support services exist if the reimbursement were to come along that we could manage our wellness and our sickness a little more effectively in an environment we could control. And technology is here to stay. It's no longer about the technology. So at LifeBridge, we're really leaning hard into not doing digital, but being digital. And so let me elaborate on what that means. Like many other health systems, we've got incredible capabilities in our hospitals, but we recognize with technology and the drive of consumerism that more individuals, if it's clinically appropriate, want to pick their site of care. And we need to make sure they can do that because 20% or less of our care happens in an organized care delivery environment. You know, what happens to our health and wellness is otherwise 80% influenced by what we eat, where we live, how we've been brought up. And the only way to start really getting to have people feel in control is to meet them where they are. And that's where, if they are ready to take advantage of digital alternatives, they can. But so what does being digital instead of doing digital mean for a high touch industry? First of all, it means managing through measurement. We've got to get a lot better about using data and analytics as our new currency. I really believe that health systems are going to win or lose on their ability to assess, take advantage, and leverage the data they have, not just patient by patient, but from a business model perspective. And we haven't been particularly good at that, right? So managing through measurement. And then you mentioned everyone's really familiar about this consumer journey and what that means. For us, it's going to be pushing hard on convenience, access, and doing so in a proactive manner. But we've also got to recognize that our providers need different and new tools. So you mentioned Cerner and Oracle. We're really investing hard in EHR usability. We've got to make sure that the tools all of our care providers have are not a barrier to their daily effectiveness. And that's not just our electronic health record. It's also our ERP system, our CRM system, our core infrastructure. So again, got to put better tools in the hands of our workforce, got to put better tools that are providing access and convenience in the hands of our community, specific to the job they want done. We're always trying to tell patients and consumers what we think they want to hear. The one thing we need to learn from other industries, and frankly, the late Clay Christensen, is what's the job to be done? What are they trying to accomplish? If they're just trying to, I don't know, get an annual physical scheduled, how do we make sure that that happens flawlessly, seamlessly, and we've made it so easy that they won't think twice about doing it again the same way the next time they need that? And that's very much a characteristic that Brian brought from outside of healthcare that we need to take on the mantle up if we're going to think differently.
I love that. And I like the reference to Clay's book. That jobs theory thing is something I use a lot. Don Trigg, our former president at Cerner, was a passionate individual around that very kind of theory. And I use it quite a bit in everywhere I've been. And I think it helps break things down and simplify things. I think we make things so darn complex. And at the end of the day, we're all just humans. We can do blocking and tackling. We can just break it down into its piece parts. And effectively, if we all know our roles and execute well, we're going to improve things significantly over time. So digital, I like the tagline. Are you being digital or are you doing digital? Well, you've been a CIO for a long time, but now you've added this whole thing called digital into your title. And it's actually a pretty consistent now. Everybody's got somebody, whether it's their CIO has expanded into this chief digital space as well, or they've actually created a separate role for digital. I'd love to hear your perspective on, does digital necessarily sit in IT, sit outside of IT? What's your thoughts on all of that? And kind of what was the decision to layer that into your title?
Look, first of all, I don't think there's any right, wrong, or different way of thinking about this. It's just like the systems you select. A lot of it's cultural. How big are you? What's your culture? How many hats do people have to wear? But when I think about just the management approach to something new, and we'll pick on AI, right? Why not? It's the latest out of the gate behind population health, behind analytics, behind DFD, digital journeys. We've got these new concepts that are coming our way really quickly. We've got to figure out, what do they mean to the organization? What do they mean to us? And then how do we culturally adapt them so we can consume them and act on them pretty effectively and quickly? In certain big organizations, the most effective way to do that is to stand up their own independent structure and then over time back integrate that into an organization. As a mid-market organization, my observation has been more of a hybrid model, meaning, and I'll pick on AI, but we'll get back to digital. For artificial intelligence, we have an executive, a small executive group, but as we're making decisions about policy, about workforce impact, about contract language, about the tools we use, we're trying to be very thoughtful about how ubiquitous we think this is going to be over the long run, and make sure that if we're making a decision around, let's just say, the contractual process, that it doesn't create a silo of activity and becomes inculcated into our existing contract review and management process. So I'm only giving that by way of example to say, Ben, there's no right or wrong here. But here's another example. I'm on a few boards, and it's not okay for a member of an executive management team to say, yeah, well, budgets, I really don't understand all that stuff, but I have a guy or I have a gal. But it seems to be totally okay in 2024 to do that around the metrics that matter for any part of someone's company. They can just be like, yeah, I don't really understand all that tech stuff. This is 2024. This isn't like, pick a date back there. It's not going to go away. So as a leader, I've got to lean into how to create a safe space for everyone to move along this change curve, because the ship has left the harbor. And I mean, it has. Like, it really is. People who are sitting around believing that technology is going to go away, that it's going to become more simple, more manual, less digital. Like, really? Lean in. It's not going away.
I mean, I'm hearing intentionality, aligned with culture, aligned with strategy. And if you can do all that and align those things in a meaningful way, you'll end up making a lot of good decisions. And the digital aspect of that wrapped into that framework, I think, is a little bit the way you guys were thinking about. So I love that.
Well, by the way, just for listeners, I saw a job that wasn't being done, and I went to my boss and I said, give it to me and I'll do it. Well, sometimes you can't wait around wondering if someone is going to, duck, goose you on the head. If you're in a leadership role and you're seeing an unmet need in your organization, it doesn't mean you need to be the one to solve for it. But if you're observing it, own it and figure out over time where it needs to live. And it just might be with you.
We had a lot of things at Cerner that you probably shouldn't say today, but I'll say this one just because I think it'll be fun for any of the old former Cerner people who were there back in the early days. But the exact same thing is we had this thing called see a snake, kill a snake. And it was like, you see a job that needs to be done, it's not getting done, do it. It's as simple as that. I love that. So on the topic of Oracle Health, which is really personal to me, LifeBridge, you guys have been a significant customer of Oracle Health and Oracle for a long period of time. There's a lot of change in the transition from Cerner to Oracle, but you guys are bullish. You're going all in with your future plans around Oracle Health. Tell us about that partnership and how they fit with your long-term plans.
Yeah, boy, Ben, that's such a personal decision for organizations. And as I was talking about being digital versus doing digital, we believe our future is going to be very different than our past. Our footprint in the ambulatory market is huge. Our growth in the for-profit space in a lot of non-traditional areas that we need to serve our community, some of which may be completely digital, are really going to flourish. And so I think we need to start with that mindset. And it's particularly important because I think it's limiting to believe if you're a hospital company, at some point, how well will you be serving your community if you don't have a health and fitness center, or you don't have sleep centers that aren't affiliated with your hospitals, or you don't have any number of wellness techniques that otherwise really aren't the purview of the traditional. But more important to the question you mentioned, Ben, I think Cerner went through a time period, and many of us as customers have been with them, where their future wasn't quite clear. We all know we need choice in the industry. Competition is a really good thing. In fact, it's the healthiest thing that's assisted. Meaningful use was really, really important. But if all of us think about the digitization of healthcare, I think we can envision a world where I'm owning my health data and I'm choosing to bring it to you as a care provider. Now, that's not how meaningful use and the federal incentive structures got us going. And what they did was incredible. It got us to where we are from an automation perspective. But I think the cat's out of the bag here on consumerism, and patients are going to drive us just based on their comfort and utilization of technology on what it's going to look like. And so, listen, I think every organization has to decide where they're going to invest their dollars. And we were above the moon excited when we understood what was going on with the Oracle transaction. This is a $200 billion company in the technology space who has probably been able to accelerate more in the last 6 months than in the last 6 years I've seen from prior management. And that's not because there wasn't intent. There just wasn't sufficient funding and focus. Now, our next fear was, why would Oracle want to push hard on healthcare? It's hard. We've seen people get in the market. We've seen people get out of the market. My own point of view is that our EHRs need to have a utility position now. We should be paying a utility fee, and they should be fulfilling a relatively utilitarian purpose. They shouldn't be niche. We shouldn't be necessarily competing on just fundamental aspects of, the basics of what an EHR can do. We really need to compete around the edges and what makes us different, not through how well we've just put into place a basic technology. So that also means you got to challenge how much of your budget that's eating up. I'm not saying it's not important, but I don't know any organization whose IT spend isn't being shared among all their other strategic investments. And Oracle is a tech company. LifeBridge isn't. We're in the people business. We're in the health and wellness business. We're here to serve our community, not to invest an over-indexed amount on automating our care. And so we're really excited. And it remains to be seen. I think this is kind of a go big or go home move right now, Ben. There are a lot of us really pulling for them. In other areas and other organizations, I know they're just exhausted from either the waiting or the treading water. We're inspired by it, and they got a lot to prove to us. But I'm cautiously optimistic because unlike perhaps some other CIOs, I came from technology. I worked for Ross Perot. I worked for EDS. I know what really good investment in good systems can liberate. And the things that other healthcare specific companies are having to create now, Oracle's already creating them. So they're just to them objects that they can plug in. They don't have the same life cycle issues. They don't have the same management issues. Heck, the cloud that we're being migrated to supports the DoD. I'm not going to argue. Of course, we'll do diligence. But when you think about the other customers that they have to serve around data integrity and security, we're in good company. So at this point, we're super, super optimistic. And I've also been really impressed with the quality team on the Cerner side that they have retained.
That's awesome. I really appreciate that perspective because I tend to hear the other perspective quite often, as you might imagine. And so I echo a lot of the things you say. I really do believe there's room for more than one player. And I think that healthy competition lifts all boats. And so I think that'll be a very good thing for the industry. And then I think where you put focus, money, energy, you get results. And I know Larry is heavily focused, investing a ton of money. And it's just kind of number one passion today. And that's saying something when a company that size is saying this is our number one priority. So more to come on that for sure. I'd love to, in a year's time, let's see where you are and hopefully do a follow-up to this. So I want to quickly pivot as we kind of start to bring this in for a landing to a leadership topic. So Leader to Leader as a podcast focuses not only on the industry, but we love to tap into your kind of golden nuggets, if you would, around leadership. You are, and have been recognized many, many times in this industry as an incredible leader. You're also a female and you're in a male-dominated space. And I would love to know how you think about that and what you do to inspire other women who are progressing in their careers and would like to get to a place where you are and what you do to help them along the way.
I would have answered that question really differently, Ben, maybe even just 10 years ago. Let me first say that healthcare is actually a pretty female-dominant industry. The majority of our workforce—
I agree with that. In the tech space, though, tends to be the other way.
Absolutely right. Listen, I'll never forget. COVID was just winding down, and I was invited to downtown Baltimore to this 200-member event technology session. I think it was on robotic process automation. And it was at this fun happy hour spot. And I showed up and there was a gal that checked me in. The room was packed and she and I were the only two women. And listen, it was tech, not healthcare. This was 2022 and there were 200 people in the room. So here's the delicate answer to that, because definitely in my workspace, the majority of my employees are men. And so I've got to tread that line between wanting to inspire and encourage more diversity in leadership roles, but doing it without disenfranchising all the men that I lead. And, how to be a good boss for them as well in a time when, frankly, it can be extraordinarily difficult when you feel as though you, for some reason, your own voice has been subrogated. So what can we do here? I think probably the example that is best served and what I share focuses on fathers. Fathers who have daughters typically can really wrap their head and their spirit around wanting all of their children to get equal opportunity. And so there is a time and a place where having all the women in the room can be very inspirational. But I think we're at a point in time now where the best way to advocate for this is for us to create a safe space for men and, frankly, dads to help us understand how we can all better serve their children coming up, whether they're boys or girls. But that's a particularly influencing role that I think is really untapped and not taken advantage of enough.
That's deep. I'm gonna have to think about that one a lot. And I have a 15-year-old daughter who is everything to me. So just hearing you say that is very impactful. And I appreciate that kind of depth of response. So that's really good. Tressa, this has been amazing. It's great to see you. I appreciate the partnership we have and the work we do together. And we look forward to much more of that as we continue to do this thing called healthcare. And you can count on us to care bravely with you. And I love what you're doing and all good stuff. And thank you for your time.
And thank you, Ben. You have done so much for this industry. I appreciate being invited. And I only wish your questions had been a little easier.
That's great. Well, thank you very much. Tressa tells it like it is. I appreciate her candor and her lessons on leadership. There is no shortage of takeaways from this episode, but here are just a few of mine. 1. Tressa and the team at LifeBridge are committed to caring bravely. They differentiate by putting patients before profits and by doing the hard work of keeping people healthy. 2. The future of healthcare is digital. That means getting comfortable with data and measurement, expanding access to virtual care, and providing user-friendly technology to providers and patients. 3, leaders don't just see problems. They own them and they fix them. So what did you think? What are your big takeaways from this episode? I'd love to hear from you on our social media channels or drop me an email from our website at healthcareitleaders.com.
Thanks for joining us for Leader to Leader. To learn more about how to fuel your own personal leadership journey through the healthcare industry, visit healthcareitleaders.com. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any insights, and we'll see you on the next episode.